Hey Saiko! Have you ever wanted to be a toad? Perhaps a toad that battles? Let's review Battletoads. Things start off with the Battletoads battling baddies while making their way down what appears to be a red carpet event made in their honor. It seems since their last outing, the Toads have done quite well for themselves. They are adored, they are beloved, they can even fly. Well, not really. It turns out that 26 years ago, the Toads were tossed into a bunker, trapped inside a simulation, and buried in a landfill. Being found in a landfill is a particularly fun bit of storytelling because not only does it symbolize the reality that Battletoads as a franchise was largely abandoned or thrown out, but I think it was also meant as an homage to Atari and the urban legend surrounding their failed 2600 game, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Legend has it that E.T. failed so miserably that Atari had over 1 million copies of the game they didn't know what to do with. So, in a bid to inexpensively get rid of all of the E.T.s, Atari decided to bury them in a landfill. What? Yep, a little toad-faced alien was dumped in a landfill like the little toad-faced toads. Now the rumors about E.T. were exaggerated. Atari didn't landfill 1 million copies of the game. It was a little over 700,000. And it wasn't just E.T., it was actually a bunch of Atari games. But the point still stands. The Toads were tossed away and long forgotten. Which leads to the entire plot of the game. Now freed, they have one mission: to become relevant once more. It's very meta. The goal in the game world is the same as the developer's goal in the real world: to bring the Battletoads back, to reignite their fandom, and make them popular again. It's a fun concept told humorously with very good voice actors. The comedy definitely leans towards the childish side of things, but I still enjoyed it because there are plenty of decent gags throughout. One of my favorite being that the Battletoads don't actually know if they're brothers or not.
So you are brothers? I don't know.
I assume it's never been made clear in the lore, but it's a pretty fun bit that's called back to a couple of times across the story. At its core, Battletoads is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. You can play as one of the 3 Toads, Rash, Zitz, or Pimple. This is the level of comedy we're dealing with, folks. And walk around the game world punching, kicking, and smashing enemies left and right. The combat is pretty great, and it's what you'd expect and want from a well-made action game. If you've played a decent brawler before, you'll know how this one works too. So instead of focusing on those mechanics, I want to highlight some of the game's more unique gameplay elements. In single-player mode, you can switch between any of the Toads with a simple press of a button. Each Toad has their own health bar, so by switching between them, you're essentially given 3 lives. Even better, if you happen to get one of your Toads knocked out, they won't be gone permanently. Instead, a countdown timer will appear next to the name, and if you can stay alive until the timer completes, the knocked out Toad will be playable again. This mechanic rewards adaptive gameplay. When you know you have 1 or 2 Toads in reserve, you can be more damage focused and aggressive in your playstyle. But once you're down to your last Toad, you should quickly change tactics to be defensive and prioritize dodging over attacking so you can give your Toad pals enough time to recover. It's a great way to make each Toad feel valuable and promotes playing as each one. Which leads me to my next point. Each Toad actually plays differently from each other. I'm not saying they're worlds apart gameplay-wise, but their differences are meaningful, and I did find myself tweaking my tactics depending on the Toad I was using. Rash is quick and nimble, but requires a bit more coordination to land some of his stronger combos, so he's sort of an advanced character. Pimple is large and powerful. He moves slower than the other 2, so timing his attacks properly can be more difficult, but the reward is massive damage dealt. Finally, Zitz is well-rounded and the easiest to combo with. When playing as him, it's very easy to feel like you're a beat-em-up action gaming god. So if you are playing with a friend who's not very good at these types of games, Zitz is the Toad you'd want them to play as. Now this wouldn't be Battletoads if it didn't have some of that Toad tongue action. Fortunately, the devs did deliver. You can eat flies that occasionally appear within a level to restore some of your health. You can also use your tongue to pick up collectibles and pull in enemies close for a nice combo. And finally, the biggest tongue-based action is the ability to jump your Toad into the background or foreground of a level by targeting metal rings you'll see across some of the environments. It's fun to see the game really embrace the uniqueness of its Toad leads. While the heart of Battletoads is definitely its combat system and side-scrolling action, I was pleasantly surprised by the variety of gameplay experiences found within the game. For instance, there's a one-off segment where you play as the Toads doing menial jobs, another one where you're helping the Toads win at some Olympic-style games. They even have their own Toad version of Rochambeau. These segments, along with mini-games and puzzles, are sprinkled throughout the story as palate cleansers to give you a break from all the action. They help with the pacing of Battletoads and keep the game, for the most part, from dragging. I say for the most part because there's one section of the game where Pimple, the big lumbering one, separates from Rash and Zitz to go on his own Eat, Pray, Love style adventure. During this section of the story, the game jumps between basic platforming levels with Pimple and a top-down Galaga-style spaceship battle with Rash and Zitz. These levels are decent to play, but the Pimple platformer gets a little dull after a few stages, and the spaceship battles get a little repetitive. If it were only for 1 or 2 stages, it would have been fine, but I think it lasts about 3 or 4 levels with Pimple and the equivalent with Rash and Zitz, and it just felt too long. I was definitely ready for that series of levels to be over by the end.
Just take one dip and end it!
For those of you who played the original Battletoads, you're probably wondering if this version includes the infamous turbo bikes. Well, it does. Like the original, the turbo bike levels simply consist of dodging and jumping over obstacles while you drive progressively faster and faster down the path.
Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
Visually, the modern game is different because the camera is placed behind the Toads, so you're driving forward instead of a side-scrolling view like in the original. Another modern tweak is that if you smash into a wall, instead of immediately losing the level, you'll switch to one of your remaining Toads just like in the beat-em-up stages. This gives you at least 3 tries to beat the stage, and trust me, you'll need them. Now you might be wondering if the modern turbo bike levels are as difficult and punishing as the original. And the answer is no, but I'm gonna say that's a good thing. I'm all for challenging gameplay, but some of those old school Nintendo hard games went a little bit overboard. It's one thing to make a game challenging and rewarding. It's quite another to turn a 1-hour game into a 20-hour grind fest by making it so impossibly hard that the idea of smashing your controller through your TV becomes almost irresistible.
Serenity now.
Fortunately, that tactic of artificially lengthening gameplay isn't used very often in today's gaming landscape. When it comes to these modern builds of retro-style games, I'm normally a fan of going old school with some high-quality pixel art. In fact, if you were to ask me before the Battletoads reboot came out what art style I hoped the game would be in, I would have 100% said it should look like a modern Super NES game, just with more frames of animation, a larger color palette, and maybe higher resolution art. But looking at Battletoads in motion, I have to say, I really like it. It's colorful and bright, the character designs are fun and fit the humor of the world, the combat animations are great and the levels are detailed and full of foreground and background elements. The world feels alive. And the art within the cutscenes match the in-game graphics well, and so it almost feels like you're playing a Nickelodeon cartoon. However, the only time I felt the game dropped in style was in the top-down spaceship stages. For whatever reason, these segments look too much like a browser game and don't match the artistic quality of the other stages. Top-down is hard to make look good, but maybe if they had used an isometric view and added more elaborate backgrounds, it would have looked better. But it's not a large part of the game, so it's not that bad, and the rest of the visuals very much make up for it. I was a kid when Battletoads came out for the Sega Genesis, and I recall renting it from Blockbuster and doing my best to beat it over a weekend before I had to return the game. I failed at that task, but I do recall loving the characters and their designs. I was and still am a big fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and these lovable Battletoads fit right into that genre of humorous color-coded combat reptiles. But oddly enough, the game didn't hook me. I liked the Toads, but I didn't feel a need to give the game another shot after that one rental. Despite that, the Battletoads remained in my heart as iconic characters from my childhood. So when I heard that a reboot was being made, I was happy for the series. I was happy the Toads would get another outing, but I still didn't feel a need to play it. It wasn't until a couple of years after it came out that I finally played the game with some friends and we had a good time. We didn't beat it, but the experience was fun. So for this channel, I decided I wanted to give the Toads one more shot. This time I would play solo and really pay attention to the gameplay and all it has to offer. Well, I'm glad I did. I think this Battletoads reboot is a pretty great game and I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. The characters are charming and well designed, the art style matches the humor and wacky antics of the game perfectly, the combat is fun and leverages the toadness of the Toads, and makes Rash, Zitz, and Pimple all uniquely fun to play. For the most part, the game's pacing is great. It was fun jumping from battles, to mini games, to cutscenes, to turbo bike stages, and then back to more battles. The only time I felt the game slowed down to the point where the stages were verging on becoming a chore rather than a fun experience was during Pimple's outing with the accompanied and slightly repetitive spaceship battle stages. I liked that they tried something new as sort of a bridge to the endgame, but I felt the segment could either have been shorter or it could have used another round of brainstorming to elevate that section of the game to the fun of the stages that came before and after. My final criticism is that Battletoads lacks replayability. If it were a 15 or 20 hour plus game, I wouldn't knock it for not incentivizing multiple playthroughs. The entire game clocks in at about 5 to 6 hours, but I feel this style of action beat 'em up is just ripe for playthrough over and over. They could have given the Toads upgradable stats so you could eventually make them uber powerful, or implemented some sort of point system to purchase or unlock new combos or weapons or even characters. It definitely would have been awesome if there were alternate paths you could take when completing the main story. Something like in Guardian Heroes where different playthroughs could literally lead to different enemies or boss fights or upgrades. As it is right now, you will experience everything the game has to offer in one playthrough. And while it's a really good time, I feel like they left a good amount of gameplay hours on the table by not focusing on repeatable play. More beat-em-ups should play like the Battletoads reboot. Between the varied combat styles of each Toad and the wealth of different mini-games and puzzles you encounter throughout the game, I think Battletoads sets a standard that side-scrolling beat-em-ups rarely meet. This game could have easily been a cash grab. Secure a license to an older series, make a generic game, and slap the Toads on the cover and see what you could get. But that's not what the developers at Delilah Studios did.
But that's not what I'm gonna do.
It's clear to me that they're fans of the series and wanted to do it justice. If all our childhood series were ushered into the modern age with the same love and care that was done for Battletoads, we'd be surrounded by amazing art and entertainment and our pop culture world would be better for it. Instead, we get money-grubbing attempts to monetize nostalgia with soulless products that are mere husks of their far superior past selves. Looking at you, Disney. The 2020 reboot of Battletoads is a love letter to the series and the beat-em-up genre in general. If you're a fan of any one of those things, do yourself a favor and order up some food, call over a couple of friends, and go on a fun-filled and funny adventure with your favorite Toads, Rash, Zitz, and Pimple. I promise you, you'll have a good time.